In and around 2010, Jakks Specific started making 31-inch giant action figures, eventually called Big Figs. In fact, they kept actually getting bigger and bigger, becoming something, well, you probably noticed them at retail if you were shopping for toys around, mid 2015-16. I was blessed enough to be the brand manager overseeing Big Figs at probably the height of its popularity right before episode 7 came out. And that's probably why I got a handy note from subscriber Chad Messer asking why companies that have like Marvel and DC license don't come out with Big Figs now, Spin Master, Hasbro. It's a good question considering how many giant characters there are. All right, so let's look at the Jakks line to kind of understand this. This line, again, I'm going to use the term Big Figs, but that wasn't used until like 2016. There was a good, 7 or 8 years with no name. They were just known as, they were just the brand. But they were split into several scales. So the 20-inch was your kind of everyday purchase, and it was only $20 back then. I mean, for a 20-inch figure for $20, it's a really good deal. We even started putting action features into them at the end, and this was a great scale to use for conventions, for redecos, and plussed up figures. Hey, the goal was to make toys that kids were going to want to play with. And the scale, though, that preceded this, that started Big Figs, was the 31-inch scale. This one sort of took a recess once 20-inch came along as the bread and butter of the line, but it definitely made its impact. In fact, that 31-inch scale is what let us make things like the BB-8, which was technically a 31-inch scaled figure. So, hey, loopholes. All right, and then, of course, there were the 48-inchers, the giant ones, my action figure, my buddy. And this is what Chad's asking about. These were toys that were used really not for sales, but to draw people into the toy aisle because they're really spectacular to look at. And again, I think that's why Chad is asking, why can't, Spin Master, who has the DC license, put these out, or, Hasbro with Marvel. The problem is they're really hard to merch at retail. They were able to sort of squeeze in due to episode 7 opening up so much toy space, but they also went on clearance pretty quick. The 20-inch figures you could purchase, kids could play with them, collectors could collect them. These giant 48-inch figures, they are really unwieldy, especially for retailers. Finding a location on the floor for them is very difficult. And I know there's HasLab that produces things like Giant Galactus, Sentinel, etc., but really, if you're going to make product for kids, it's got to be at retail. So that, again, brings us back to that question, is why do companies that have superhero licenses not make these giant figures like Jakks did? And, well, it's because most of these giant characters are too obscure. Outside of, for Marvel, Galactus, Sentinel, for DC, the Anti-Monitor, while there are other characters in these universes that are huge, or other brands like, Gundam and, Power Rangers that have giant characters, they're just not as well known. And retail has very limited space. Now, people make the argument, well, what about, all these giant things, right? I mean, they could do them like TVs or like the playhouses, bicycles. I mean, what if you put a giant, Anti-Monitor there? Okay, well, take a step back and look at, again, what these toys are that are taking up so much floor space. These are all products that kids are playing with, giant Hot Wheels sets and giant doll houses and large activity toys, outdoor toys, things like those, radio or, ride-on Jeeps or playhouses. Not one-off giant action figures of cosmic beings. There's just not a big enough audience. Even larger characters like the Sentinel, when they show up at retail, aren't exactly, hitting the ceiling. They usually, I think, what does it say, 16-inch figure, maybe not even that, 12-inch, to find the box. Obviously, toy lines need fans, but again, that whole, expectation versus reality, adult collectors are just such a tiny portion that there's just not enough of us to support these kind of characters. It's, it's not bigger on the inside. And if you couldn't sell Michelangelo and Darth Vader at this size, how are you going to sell anyone else, really? I hope this video clarifies why toy companies don't make giant figures at retail, and if you've got more questions about it or haven't answered fully, let me know. I can always do a follow-up. Thanks for watching, thanks for sharing, and I'll see you in the next video.